The most dangerous challenge. Okay. The most dangerous challenge that faces education in Palestine is violence practiced by the most racist Israeli government, which is creating an unsafe environment for learning. Gaza Strip is no longer a safe place for our students and our teachers as they suffer from hunger, thirst, cold, lack of electricity and the internet. Thousands of them were martyred, injured, or have experienced their families being torn about because of the displacement policy practiced by the occupation. The Israeli aggression on Gaza Strip caused the complete elimination of the educational system through the destruction of the educational infrastructure of schools and universities, and the assassination of tens of thousands of innocent victims, including children and educational staffs. It's a systematic genocide aimed at destroying the Palestinian education system in Gaza Strip and depriving generations from education, which is considered a main human right. There are 700,000 students who continue to be deprived of access to their schools for 2 academic years in a row because of the severe damage to the educational process since the beginning of the aggression. Statistics show that more than 13,677 students from various educational stages were martyred, and more than 21,897 students were injured, not to mention the disabilities among them. In addition to more than 663 from the educational staff were martyred, and more than 2,825 were injured due to the ongoing massacres by the Zionist occupation in Gaza Strip. The number is increasing every moment because of the ongoing massacres practiced by the occupation. According to schools, 90% of schools in Gaza have been completely or partially destroyed, and more than 241 public schools have been severely damaged. More than 111 public schools have been completely destroyed, and more than 91 public schools have been attacked and damaged. 89 UNRWA schools also have been attacked and damaged. The schools which have survived the war have been turned into shelter centers for the displaced Palestinian people. Gaza Strip has become the most dangerous place in the world for children, and that no place is safe there. The most difficult thing that the educational process will face after the war is preparing our students psychologically, emotionally, and healthily, as many of them suffer from psychological shocks and face difficult health conditions, and many of them have lost their friends, their families, or their houses. More than 625,000 school-age students suffer from deep trauma and psychological disorders due to the aggression. Depriving students from their right to education has many deep and negative effects on their psychological health and their mental and educational abilities, and even on their social life. The situation in the West Bank is not better. The educational institutions in West Bank are also exposed to Israeli occupation's aggression and the attacks of the colonists with the support of the far-right occupation government, which is working to implement the widest process of ethnic cleansing of our people and replacing it with the colonists, especially after they were armed to become more criminal. And because of that, 146 schools have been attacked and damaged. About 90 schools that are subjected to aggression in the north of West Bank, Jenin, Tulkarem, and Tubas, were forced to attend electronically. The educational loss in these schools is large, as this repeated disruption causes students to lose a large part of the educational materials and subjects that must be completed according to the yearly plan. The Israeli occupation has also tightened its military measures in West Bank through the installation of roadblocks and iron gates at the entrances to each Palestinian villages and cities. The number of military checkpoints and iron gates erected by the occupation in the West Bank reached about 898. Our students, our teachers, and administrative staff are being harassed by the Israeli soldiers and settlers or the colonists on their ways to schools, especially schools that are located in Area C. As you know, in Palestine, we are divided into 3 areas, A, B, and C. Area C is fully controlled by the Israeli government. They sometimes cannot reach their schools, face difficulty reaching their schools. They sometimes cannot reach their schools because of the closure of the racist gate. They suffer a lot at the checkpoint. So they put, after the war, they put many roads, gates, iron gates at the entrance of every village and the city. In the morning, while we are going to schools and to our work, they close the gates and start to search everybody, go or pass through the checkpoints or through the gates. The latest statistic shows that 100 students in West Bank were martyred and 641 were injured and 353 were arrested. 4 persons from the educational staff were martyred, 21 were injured, and more than 176 were arrested. The number is increasing every day because of the continuous aggression. This left psychological effects on our children and a feeling of insecurity. The education sector in Jerusalem also in primary target for the Zionist government as it works hard to control it in Jerusalem. The occupation's government committed a new crime against education by closing the UNRWA schools 2 days ago in the occupied Jerusalem. This crime falls within the framework of a systematic and continuous attack on education in Jerusalem. It's a violation of the international laws on the right to education and conventions on the rights of the child. This is also an attack on refugees' rights and an attempt to liquidate the international relief agencies present in the Holy Land, Jerusalem. This decision targets 110,000 refugees who rely on the agency's services in Jerusalem. The occupation authorities also committed a crime against the education in Jerusalem by reprinting the Palestinian curriculum books and deleting every subject related to Palestine. They Judaize its curriculum to suit the Zionist plans in order to change the thinking of our generation and distance them from their issue, the Palestinian issue. This is a wide campaign of forgery and distortion of the national platform, a platform which falls within the context of the escalation of its continuous attack aimed at striking the Palestinian identity by fighting its curricula or its platform. Another challenge that education system in Palestine faces is the irregularity of the education system because of the financial crisis faced by the Palestinian National Authority, which make it unable to fulfill its obligation towards its state employees, including teachers, and prompt them to take a number of steps, including striking and refraining from going to schools, which is harmful to the educational process. As you know, our salaries for 4 years, we are taking only 70% of our salaries because of the crisis that we go through. This happens because Israel is withholding the Palestinian tax revenues, the clearing funds, illegally and deducting large amount of it under many excuses, which is a violation of the signed agreement, especially the Paris Economic Protocol. The Israeli government take our tax money and they cut some of them under many excuses. And sometimes they pirate our taxes money. When we talk about education, we talk about the whole system. It is absolutely impossible to put this system back in place immediately. Returning to normal life in Gaza will take a long time because the damage is extensive. We have to resume education immediately in Gaza. The international community and the educational unions around the world owe it to the children of Palestine to support them in regaining their right to education. We demand your support in doing the following recommendations, which may help us save the educational system in Palestine. First of all, the need to exert pressure on your governments to force the Israeli government to stop the massacres against civilians in the Gaza Strip immediately, and the rapid access of humanitarian aid to the Strip. Second, highlighting the educational situation in Palestine and the effects of the aggression on children and showing their suffering through communicating with decision makers in countries and international organizations in order to provide a safe educational environment for our children. Decision makers must send a message that those who target schools and universities will be responsibility, as attacks on education cannot be tolerated. Third, providing protection for children, ensuring their rights to education, and prosecuting Israel for its violation of international laws regarding targeting schools and depriving children of education. Fourth, the international institution, for most of which is UNESCO and UNICEF, must bear their responsibilities and defend the right of refugee children to free and safe education. Five, addressing the catastrophic effects left by the educational genocide and providing sufficient support to rebuild the infrastructure and rebuild the schools. Six, finding a just and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue. It's important to ensure the sustainability of any efforts to rebuild the educational system. Seven, providing educational opportunities that suit our children's circumstances, including children who suffer from disabilities, the amputees. Eight, shelter sites and tents can also be used as educational sites in Gaza, but this requires providing support to equip these sites with the necessary educational equipment and supplies, and this requires strong and integrated efforts. Ninth, providing training programs for teachers that qualify them to deal with children who suffer from psychological trauma and learning difficulties due to the interruption of education for 2 consecutive years. Finally, raising teachers' capacities in integrating social emotional learning activities into learning lessons through training courses held by trainers trained by the General Union of the Palestinian Teacher. We need your support to exceed the number of teachers who can benefit from these courses. Despite the pain, hope remains. Despite the challenges and obstacles imposed by the occupation to force us to displace our land, the Palestinian will for life and education remains strong. We will work hard to guarantee the right to education for our children. The occupation will not succeed in implementing its plans and depriving these students of their rights. Education Palestine is our capital and it is at the top of our priorities. This is what our people in Gaza approved by undertaking educational initiatives and their adherence to life under aggression, hunger, and siege. Thank you again for your solidarity with us and for having this event. Thank a lot for the Association of Greek Workers of Quebec. And thanks for listening.